Good morning, everyone, or whatever time zone you may be. Welcome to OTC Asia Live University R&D Showcase. I'm Ray Johnson, Professor of Well Engineering and Energy Simulation Co-Chair at the University of Queensland. Are pleased to have Jihan Lee present a study that is research that's working on a flowback analysis method of estimating fracture properties in shale reservoirs at the China University of Petroleum. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome Jihan we'll listen to her presentation, and then I'll have a short Q&A to follow. Please feel free as you're going along to put your Q&A into the comments so that we can see those and that Jihan can answer your questions following her presentation. So without further ado, Jihan, we can start the presentation.
Hello everyone, I'm Li Jihan from China University of Petroleum. I'm very glad to have a chance to attend the OTC Asia 2022 University R&D Showcase. This is my report title, A Flowback Analysis Method for Estimating Fracture Properties in Shale Reservoirs. The report is divided into three sections. The first one is research background. As we all know, the technology of mounting fracture horizontal well is vital to unconventional oil and gas. And there are two questions in this technology. The first one is how to evaluate the hydraulic fracturing performance. And the second one is how to estimate fracture properties. The current fracture inversion technology mainly includes three aspects: well test, microseismic monitoring, and dynamic production analysis. And these technologies have their disadvantages. Well test requires to shut in, and it has low economy. Microseismic monitoring is hard to quantitatively evaluate fractures, and dynamic production analysis requires long-term data and is difficult to explain multi-phase flow. Recently, many academic teams proposed the new method based on flowback data. From this picture, we can learn the flowback stage is between fracturing and the shut-in stage, and is earlier than long-term prediction. So the method doesn't need to shut in, and the fracture cognition can be advanced to flowback stage. And this new method can evaluate fracture properties quantitatively and qualitatively. Compared to other technologies, this new method is more economical, comprehensive, and timely. The flowback analysis method includes inversion and forward modeling. The fracture and reservoir parameters are inversed by constructing the simplified model. And however, the simplified model may not reflect the true reservoir, but it is easier than forward modeling. As for forward modeling, it is stimulated by establishing a complex model, but it may lead to multiple solutions. So how to balance this contradiction is the difficulty of flowback dynamic analysis. Therefore, the current technical difficulty is how to interpret multi-phase flow data from fracture matrix. This is the technical route. First of all, a two-phase composite model was established, and in this model, two-phase flow and fracture matrix complex flow are considered. And the model also includes variable flow rate, bottom hole pressure, and reservoir fracture fluid properties. And based on the model, flow region analysis and parameter inversion are made. The flow regions include IALF and BDF, and the parameter inversion can get initial fracture pore volume and initial fracture permeability. And for fracturing, these two properties are the most important. And multiple solutions constraints are involved in the inversion process. There are two constraints. The results of different flow regions confirm each other, and the results of different phases confirm each other. And the last, this whole theory will be applied in an application in Marcellus shale gas reservoir. And next is the second section, conceptual model and analysis method. First of all, we established a physical model. And in this model, we considered two-phase flow and fracture matrix complex flow. The blue arrow means water and the red arrows means oil or gas. The green part is fracture and the other space is matrix. And in this model, the parameter XF is the length of fracture and H is the height of fracture. And in this physical model, we assume that XF is much longer than H. But in this model is only suitable for conventional reservoir. For shale reservoir, we established the matrix microscopic seepage model. The biggest difference between shale reservoir and the conventional reservoir is the matrix. The nanopores in shale matrix includes inorganic and organic nanopores. It is reflected as the total apparent liquid permeability in the mathematical models. And based on the physical models, we further established the mathematical models. From this model, we brought in RMP to get the variable flow rate, and the other variable BHP and reservoir fracture fluid properties also represented in these mathematical models. And there is a parameter KGM. The parameter can be replaced by the total apparent permeability. If not, this model is suitable for conventional reservoirs. And by solving these mathematical models, we can get the solutions, and we can look at these solutions. We get the different times. Based on the two different times, we can divide the flow regions. At the first, this stage is called infinite acting linear flow. After the pressure propagates to the fracture tip, this stage is called boundary dominated flow. And according to the flow regions, once we get after processing flowback data, we can get the two-phase diagnostic plot, and this plot is a log-log graph. We can see the different flow regions get different slopes according to solutions. And to calculate fracture properties, we further separated the flow regions. The first is infinite acting linear flow. This graph is Cartesian coordinates, and we focused on the first half. According to the expression of RMP, the slope should be the parameter AJ, and we can get the KFI by calculating the parameter AJ. Similarly, in this Cartesian coordinates, graph, we focused on the latter half, and we can get the VFI and KFI by calculating parameters AG and BG. And we can get the true KFI in the different flow regions. And this is the first strings. The results of different flow regions can confirm each other. And now you may have questions. How can we divide it? How can we divide the first half and the latter half? To answer these questions, we should go back to the two-phase diagnostic plot. The point at which slopes change is the timing we need. And there is one thing should be noticed. The slopes in the diagnostic plot is different from the parameter AG. And we come back to the fracture properties. To get the KFI and VFI, we should calculate the pseudo variables which are defined. And to evaluate the pseudo variables, we use the material equations. And by solving them simultaneously, we can get the 4 parameters. But there is one parameter, which is VFI. VFI is not only one of the variables to be solved, but also an input parameter. So an iterative method is adopted. This is the whole workflow for VFI and KFI. At first, we give an initial guess for VFI, and then we calculated the 4 parameters by solving material equations. And then we can evaluate the pseudo variables. Then we can get the diagnostic plot and the specialty plot in different phases, and can calculate the VFI and KFI. And then we can get the new VFI. If VFI and the KFI converge, we can get the fracture properties. If not, we updated the 2 parameters and go back to the first step. And this we can get the 2 with KFI and VFI. This is the second constraint. The results of different phases confirm each other. So this is the same technical route. We establish the physical model and mathematical models, and then based on these solutions, we divided the flow regimes and went on the flow regimes analysis, which includes diagnostic plot and straight line analysis, and then we'll proceed parameter inversion to get the fracture properties. And now the second section, and now the last section, field application. This is an application in Marcellus Shale gas reservoir in United States, and this picture represents flowback and the production history of Marcellus shale gas reservoir or shale gas wells. At the early stage of flowback, water production was dominant, and the gas production gradually increased. At the later stage of flowback, gas is mainly produced, and the output gradually decreases. And from the flowback data, we can get this diagnostic plot, and then we can calculate it. We can calculate the parameters. We can calculate fracture properties from the straight line analysis, and we can see the different flow regimes get similar solutions. And In the same way, from the flowback data, we can get the straight line in water phase and gas phase, and the fracture parameters are similar. The last is conclusions. For shale, a seepage mathematical model coupled with two-phase flow and complex seepage mechanism is established and solved semi-analytically. Based on the analytical solution of the model, a set of flowback data interpretation and analysis workflow is formed for parameter inversion and fracturing evaluation. The workflow consists of two parts: flow region division and straight line analysis. The feasibility of the method is verified by analyzing the flowback data of Marcellus Shale gas reservoir. My report is finished. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. And we're now live for questions. I guess with the first question, what's new about this method compared to previous methods? And I encourage everyone to please bring questions forward so that we can ask them of Jihan.
Okay. This method coupled two-phase flow and macroscopic seepage mechanism in nanopores, and the previous methods considered only one of these. And for this method, it can apply to both shale, oil, and gas reservoir. And we know there are lots of study in shale oil reservoir, but for shale gas reservoir, the inversion method of flowback data is seldom used. And this method can give a more realistic presentation for formation fluid flow. So this is different.
Okay. I guess the next question is, how have you considered and how did slippage considered in the microscopic seepage model?
We can see from the in the seepage model picture, we assume that there is only oil or gas in the organic nanopores, and two-phase fluid in the inorganic nanopores, and the slippage exists between two flow fluids in inorganic nanopores, and for organic nanopores, slippage exists between the fluid and the pore wall. And there is a room for improvement in this hypothesis. And I think we can further refine the model to reflect a more realistic matrix.
And as we know, a lot of these shale gas and shale oil reservoirs are not just two phases. There's the third phase as well. So how do you plan to implement that, or what steps would have to be taken in the model to accommodate for the three-phase flow?
Actually, to answer this question, we should go back to the first step, the physical model, especially in the seepage in the shale matrix model. As I explained before, we only assume the two phase in the organic nanopores, and we can change this model. And then in the mathematical models, the mathematical equations are based on two-phase flow, and this will be different for three-phase flow. And the whole calculation and the whole workflow will be different.
Okay. Right. I guess one of my thoughts is that our data, the data you had looked fairly clean. Was there a lot of cleaning on that data done before you analyzed it, or was that data that clean on before you analyzed it? In other words, clean. It wasn't more often than not. Flowback data is very erratic. Flowback data is very noisy. Did you have to do a lot of cleaning on that, or was it pretty noisy to begin with?
Yes, for the data, actually, to get the straight line and the diagnostic plot, we have to select the data. There's a lot of data we don't need. When we picture the plot, we do a lot of work. Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. So getting good data is important for this process, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that's been proposed by other authors who are looking at rate transient analysis is the acquisition of very early time data and downhole data. Have you any thoughts on that? Would that aid your process to get that early time half slope?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Yeah. A lot of authors like Dilhan Ilk have talked about the importance of getting very, very early data, like early in the flowback, minutes, hours, especially downhole data. Can you say, would that help you in this process to get more data early time to really define that linear flow region?
Well, this I didn't think about that. Sorry.
No problem.
Um,
Yeah. So would more data in the early time be better?
I think it will be better, but we don't have evidence to approve yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So any other research you're working on, or that you want to talk about, or expansions of this model that you're working on?
Well, actually, it's awkward because I I majored in CCS. I'm not doing this. Yes, it's not my best work.
Okay. All right. Well, Jihan, we thank you very much for presenting, and we thank you all for attending the R&D showcase. And look and refer back to the program for the next sessions, and enjoy the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.